So today I get to be a student again. At least that's how it feels, which I'm excited about because we're going to be talking about a topic with one of the leading experts in the field of NK cell activation. And if you don't know what that is, it's an important part of your immune system and what doctors can do, specifically Dr. Jeff Gross and his approach to helping the immune system fight better for you, rebalancing the immune system, helping those messenger cells defend against harmful, worn out, what are called quote unquote zombie cells that drive inflammation, speed up aging, none of the things that any of us want. So this cutting edge science, I'm going to be asking tons of questions, I'm sure, because some of these topics and concepts within this are going to go back to, I think, my basic immunology class, which I haven't had probably for 23, 24 years at this point. So, Dr. Jeff Gross, thanks for spending some time with me.
Thank you for having me. This is great.
So, unpack this a little bit for everybody in general layman's terms about how, what these discoveries, what we understand of the immune system, what are NK cells. Let's just start at very basic
Yeah,
level.
sure. So I practice in the regenerative medicine, longevity space. I'm a recovering neurological surgeon, spine surgeon, and I still do some of that. I do a lot of musculoskeletal care, a lot of stem cells, but I had nothing for many years to offer patients with cancer, and I started doing some heavy research into what's going on at this cellular level in cancer because I'm a nerd. I read journal articles every morning and I like to dig into what's new and what I can do to help people better. And since we don't use regular stem cell type approaches for cancer because we don't want to accidentally stimulate growth, not that we would, but we're not sure. It was clear to me that the immune system has a lot to do with cancer. And a healthy immune system tends to clear out accidental cancer cells in our system. And the part of our immune system that does that is a very small percentage of our white blood cells called NK cells, standing for natural killer cells. So, and these cells are not just cancer killers, they kill all abnormal cells, including senescent cells. And these are, as you mentioned, called zombie cells also. And these are cells that are kind of outlive their utility, but they drag on our resources. They leak, inflammatory molecules. They're yucky. And that's why they're zombies. And the more of them you can clear out, the better your overall inflammatory or anti-inflammatory health is, and the better your younger cell population is. They also, these natural killer cells remove parasite infected cells, other infected cells, but also tumor cells. And they're unique in their ability to selectively identify abnormal cells like cancer cells, but also selectively kill them. And that's where they get their name. So I studied general things about natural killer cells, and it was clear that people that had a diagnosis of cancer across the board had reduced numbers and reduced functions. So quality and quantity of these natural killer cells. And I thought, hey, if we could give them back or enhance their natural killer cell function, maybe we could help fight the cancer, but naturally, not necessarily just through chemotherapy, radiation, and all these other things, which may have the role still, but boy, wouldn't it be nice to have something we could do, naturally? So I started researching that, and I wasn't the first to come up with this idea. So I didn't invent anything here. And it turns out that natural killer cells work through signaling. They secrete or produce and distribute small vesicles. And the listeners are probably thinking, small, aren't cells small? And they are, but these are even smaller, maybe 1/1000th the size of a cell. And these are called extracellular vesicles or exosomes. And they are made by a cell. They contain a cargo. And in the genre of natural killer cells, they're very specific vesicles, specific exosomes that identify and selectively kill their recipient abnormal cells. So a natural killer cell works by delivering these exosomes. I thought, well, wait a minute. What if you just got the exosomes? That's the actual ammunition. That's what we need. And it turns out I wasn't the first to think of that. There's plenty of research in using natural killer cells to kill an assortment of tumors in all kinds of different cell lines, in animals. In fact, there are wonderful studies where they took malignant brain tumors out of humans, injected them into mice, sorry, mice, and just under the skin, and had these tumors growing. And they took natural killer cell exosomes, just injected through the skin into the tumor, and the tumors melted away. I thought, you know what? I need to get these. I need to make them available to people who want to try them as an augmentative approach, as maybe an alternative approach. We're here to make things available to people who want to try them. So I worked for quite some time to vet a source out of Europe, and now I've had these for about 13 months in my practice. And although they can be used to clear out senescent cells in an anti-aging move, we reserve them for our cancer patients who want to try them because I have so few of them. And really, that's where we can make the biggest difference.
For the exosomes and natural killer cells, there are many different types of cancers with
Right,
different markers, tumor markers indicating different types of cancers that we
right.
may test for. So, how is a natural killer cell and the exosome, the molecules that the exosome contain agnostic, tumor agnostic, meaning
Yep,
it doesn't matter which tumor type it is.
yep. Yeah, there are some specific receptors that they seek on these abnormal cells. And I mean, is it possible there's a tumor that can evade this? Maybe we haven't identified that yet. The specific molecules inside the exosomes that are sort of hiding in the Trojan horse, waiting to be delivered into the cancer cell are a couple enzymes. Granzyme is one of them, and they cause that cell to lyse or rupture and kill it. So they're the only exosomes I'm aware of that contain those particular enzymes.
And is it, for people listening, why does this not then kill healthy cells as well?
Because the mechanism, the receptor mechanism, isn't apparent on the normal cells. I think it has to do with a particular CD marker, which is a cell surface receptor,
Mhm.
and it's either cloaked or uncloaked. I can't remember the exact nature, but it's only the abnormal cells that take this in. I could take a dish, a petri dish full of normal cells. I could pop these exosomes in there, and they just float around and not enter a single cell.
And in Europe, is this approved as a treatment in Europe for cancers?
I'm not sure I can answer that question because I'd ask you to define what you mean by approved, and then let's dig into that because I think there's a misnomer of that phrase, and we should clear it up.
Great. I'm glad you mentioned that because I'd love to hear how you think about it. What I mean is, has any governing medical body there in Europe and the EU, and I know they're different countries and they may run things differently, but any countries in Europe where it is can be marketed as
Ah,
a treatment, because that is what an FDA approval means. It means that a company can market a product for the treatment of the prevention of a disease.
you got it 100% right, and thank you for that. We throw around this phrase
Yeah,
of let's just stay with the U.S. for a minute. FDA approved, and people think, and I'm sure they want them to, that means that clinicians can or cannot do something or offer a treatment. That is not the case. The FDA does not regulate the practice of medicine. That is a sacred relationship between a clinician and a patient. And the clinician's job is to lay out all the options. But you are correct. The approval has to do with marketing language, marketing claims.
right.
So
But it's a little it's there's substance behind that, or hopefully there are. You and I could come up with many examples where there are FDA approved drugs and treatments where their efficacy is minimal at best and the safety profile is not very good. But regardless, at least from a regulatory perspective, the role of the FDA and the um, expert reviewers or expert panels on the FDA presumably are to also review clinical trial data so that when a marketing claim is made, such as, can treat bipolar disease, that their clinical trial evidence showing efficacy and the safety profile is such that they've concluded that the potential benefits outweigh the potential risks.
There are elements of truth in that. There are also elements of assumption, or what you use the word presumably. So, yes, we would hope that the consumer watchdog element is backed by scientific members who look at real studies, but we know that's heavily biased and influenced by big pharma. We know that the FDA has made errors, and they're correcting some right now about hormones and vaccines, and uh, and so many things that
Even
clinicians do.
dietary like
Well,
recommendations. But
true,
you're
but
right.
that's not a drug or a
No, I
treatment.
know,
So
but I'm just
yeah.
showing these expert panels, quote
Yeah,
unquote, you know, doing the
yeah. And the
research.
experts, look at the experts. They're not usually active clinicians. So the other thing is peer-reviewed literature is so poor these days. You can't even understand what the title means or what they're trying to say. And lastly, what clinicians do is not always approved by the FDA. When, as a surgeon, we did so many things with medications for brain injury and what have you, that there's no approval for a marketing claim, but it's ubiquitously out there.
Right.
So you're correct. And that's why here today, and when I treat people, we are not making any claims to guarantee a treatment or a cure for a disease or a condition. But as a clinician, I've never guaranteed anything. So this is no different from the usual practice. And we should not over rely on the government telling us how to treat patients. We have a Hippocratic duty to make these things available to people, and they have a right to try. So there's conflicting regulation, right? They have a right to try them.
Yeah, I love that you're talking about putting the clinician in the direct relationship and decision making authority in consultation with the patients and helping the patients navigate their options, but putting the patient first, because unfortunately our healthcare system as a whole has gotten away from that. It's so driven by what's going to be reimbursed, protocol medicine, fear of medical legal exposure, fear of
Yep.
getting licenses, revoked or getting in front of a review board.
Yep.
And instead of the pure form of medicine, which is a direct doctor-patient
Yep.
relationship. And so I love that is your approach, your paradigm. That's where you're coming from. And so when you're
Yep.
looking at this research on the natural killer cells and the exosomes and working with patients on this, obviously there has to be a discussion as well of the potential risks. So what are there any potential risks with this?
So far, none have been reported in the medical evidence. There have been no side effects except for, the pain from poking your vein for an IV or pain from poking your tumor with a needle. But so far, we have not identified any. We talk about theoretical ones. We talk about rejection, although we've never seen it. Exosomes don't really carry appreciable genomic DNA, meaning they're very difficult. They're very neutral to the immune system. They're sort of immunoprivileged. They can come right in the front door with a VIP card. So we usually don't have those types of issues.
And the number of treatments somebody may need, how does that work?
We take each person as a precision medicine approach.
Yeah.
So we customize it. We want something we can track, whether it's a scan or tumor markers or something we can visibly see and measure so that we can track the treatment. If it's responding and more might be necessary, then we approach it that way. If it's not responding, then we try something different. This is part of the integrative and natural approach to, treating diseases that have an inflammatory root to them. And I'm medically trained, but I lean more integrative and natural medicine than anything these days. So I appreciate that more and more. And so many things we learned in the traditional medical sense, they are wrong. They were wrong. We're learning that they were wrong. They are wrong. Not that all the natural things are perfect either, but I'm trying to continue to learn more each time. And we do that patient by patient by making each one an individual. There's no one size fits all.
Someone might be thinking, well, look, I have an immune system. I have natural killer cells. My natural killer cells produce exosomes. Why aren't they killing the cancer cells?
I would want to see their natural killer cell numbers, counts, and you can do that test
Yep.
because I would argue that it's possibly that their natural killer cell quantities have declined over time, and we see that in cancer populations. So what if we need to augment it? What if you do need to add a fuel additive to your car to get better, mileage performance out of it? Sometimes you have to do that.
Yeah. And do cancer cells release any chemicals, cytokines that suppress the body's ability to produce natural killer cells? So they're also
Yes.
working to suppress that to
Yes.
preserve their own cancer life.
Yes. So tumors are amazing at survival, and they create what's called the tumor microenvironment around themselves. And that tumor microenvironment does involve certain biochemicals and cytokines that suppress B cells and T cells. Natural killer cells are pretty good about getting through them. There are some mechanisms that suppress natural killer cells, but not the exosomes. That's another reason why the exosomes are advantageous over just giving NK cells.
And so when somebody has exosome treatment, if the burden of cancer is decreasing and that's those suppressive molecules that the cancer cells were secreting that reduce the body's own ability to produce natural killer cells, also I'm assuming would be going down. If the total number of cancer cells is decreasing, then their ability to suppress our own immune system, I would imagine, also is decreasing. So do you see, as the cancer burden is decreasing, the body's own natural killer cell numbers start to increase, and then the body's own immune system is able to take over more and do a better job at fighting this itself?
That's a great question. We haven't measured that. But it makes sense to me as a tumor burden is decreasing. Does the immune, because there's less anti-immune behavior from the tumor, does our own immune system improve and do a better job of fighting it? Well, that's probable. I think also it's a lot easier to remove if you start out with 1 billion cancer cells and we can knock it down to 100 million, a tenth of that. It's a lot easier to clear out a tenth of that than it is to clear out 1 billion of them. Plus, at the same time, we do give IV vitamin C, high dose, IV curcuminoids. We do recommend the full spectrum of integrative, anti-cancer treatments from fasting to, high intensity exercise and different things to also enhance the immune system to kick it up into high gear.
What about surgery? Is this being used at all if somebody has a tumor that needs to be surgically removed? Can the tumor size decrease to make surgery more likely to be more successful? Is that one of the applications at all?
So that's a great concept. We've considered that. We haven't done that since I'm not an oncologic surgeon by definition. We would seek to partner with one and have them, debulk the disease and then, before they leave the tumor bed, you know, infuse the area with NK exosomes would be a brilliant and natural way to, augment their treatments. We do know that injecting tumors has an amazing response with natural killer cell exosomes. And we are just putting the finishing touches on a state-of-the-art injection facility, and we will have interventionalists that can, inject liver and spleen and other deeper lesions that I, even as a surgeon, wouldn't feel comfortable injecting in the organ systems.
Wow, I mean, my brain's going crazy right now. So many questions, and it sounds like some of these questions are really on the cutting edge of
Totally,
what's
yeah.
known and what's not known, because what you're doing is on the cutting edge, and what you're
Yeah.
providing to patients is really on the cutting edge. When you're looking at cancer, then obviously you're not doing just one thing. You're doing an integrative approach to this. When you talk to conventional oncologists, because I'm assuming most patients who come to you probably have a conventional MD oncologist or DO that they're working with,
Right.
how is it received?
Mixed. Some of them can't do anything but consume the Kool-Aid of chemotherapy, radiation, or whatever, they're used to or what they were taught a couple decades ago. Some of them are very interested and open to a holistic approach, whether it's in addition to or even let's try this first because it's natural, and then let's let's see what happens thereafter. Let's work together. There's a little bit of that. Most of the patients I see have an appetite for what we do. They're looking for some alternative in a natural setting. They've either already had enough chemotherapy, they're done with it, or they may do this type of natural killer cell treatment in between cycles or instead of. We do have a number of people who are frankly just will not have will not have the cytotoxic type of chemotherapies.
Yeah. And how, so let me back up just a sec, because again, my brain is just going a mile a minute here, because this is so exciting. When somebody comes in, there's got to be a selection process, I imagine, because we all do that with patients to
Yeah.
make sure that they are good candidates for whatever treatment that we are considering. So, in looking at and trying to understand whether exosome treatment or therapy might be appropriate for any given patient, what do you look at? What questions do you ask? What labs do you look at? Is it to determine whether there's a good probability of success?
Well, I don't know what those indicators are for success yet because we don't have enough to draw from scientifically. But I'm looking at tumor markers. Some cancers have a tumor marker you can follow, so you know if your treatment is becoming effective, right? The tumor marker will drop. Some cancers don't have a reasonable tumor marker. So then we go to imaging, like a PET scan. We want to see where the tumor is metabolically active, meaning growing, compared to normal tissue in the body. So a PET scan is a great way to do that. So we would do the treatment 3 to 6 months later, maybe repeat the PET scan, see what it looks like. Are there new areas? Are there diminished areas? Are there some residual areas that we need to attend to? And we also look at general labs, cell counts, immune system function, inflammatory markers, which are ubiquitous, right? We do those for so many things. And we're starting to use more mitochondrial markers, especially now in the advent of the ability for us to obtain these different therapeutic peptides that we're also using in concert. So there are a number of peptides that can be used to help suppress cancer.
And when somebody is working with you and comes in, there's a menu of options, essentially, it sounds like, and you see a difference in how you personally approach this. Is there a difference between solid tumors versus like blood dyscrasias,
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
lymphomas,
Yeah.
those sorts of things?
Yeah. The bloodborne tumors, the lymphomas, leukemias, those sorts of things respond to intravenous natural killer cell exosomes. And there are studies on this. I'm not the first to try this. For solid tumors, there are studies showing the direct injection of the tumor, the exosomes are small enough to disperse within that tumor. Whereas if you put cells inside of a tumor, they may not disperse at all. They're too big and they're neighbored by cells. So it's like one brick pushing against another brick. Where the exosomes are 1,000 times smaller, so they intermingle and intersperse and can attack all the cells there and shrink the tumors. And that's what we've seen in anecdotally in the reasonably decent number of patients we've been able to try. I have a limited number of doses available to me. When I obtained the first set of dosing from Europe, they only had 40 doses in existence, and I bought
Wow.
25% of them. So we can have access to more, but this is a limited resource at this time.
Are there companies working on changing that?
I think so. The problem here is you have to have a good source of natural killer cells, and they are maybe 1 or 2% of the immune system. So you have to get them to duplicate in cell culture, and they only like them to duplicate a few times because a copy of a copy of a copy of a copy starts to have changes. If you've ever seen the movie Multiplicity, the Michael Keaton clones himself, and it's like it gets dumber and dumber as he goes on. And well, we don't want dumb natural killer cells. And then they only make so many exosomes, so you can only collect so much. And to get a therapeutic dose, you have to repeat this process many, many, many times. So it's hard to concentrate them at scale. There was a paper in the last few years about how to improve the volume production of that uh, out of the Chinese literature, but I haven't seen that be made available to us. We are currently unable to get these from China. The scientists are very friendly, but the government does not like to share.
Hmm.
So I've had to source them from Europe, and there are only a few labs out there that make them available.
Yeah. Now you do an integrative approach, so it's one modality or one thing that you'll use. Solid tumors have a way of, at least the way that I think of it, anecdotally or colloquially, walling themselves off, reducing
Yes.
blood flow, keeping, being the gatekeepers of what gets in and out to preserve their own tumor life. So, what other modalities, what things do you do to help the exosomes work better that may change that physiology and that little anatomical structure that they're creating to keep their own life going?
Well, we start with the foundation, diet, exercise, sleep, stress reduction, hormesis, which might include fasting, hot
Would you
sauna.
define that, what that means for people? Because I think a lot of people may not know that term.
The word hormesis means to provide a slight cellular stress in order to build cell resilience, adaptability. So it's like exercise. You exercise and it's like it hurts and you have to work at it and you're sore after, but you build a stronger muscle. So we can do that with the immune system. 72-hour water fasts are amazing at resetting the immune system. High intensity exercise is a wonderful augmentative cancer care approach. We love hot sauna, and I mean not infrared, I mean real sauna,
Yeah.
180 degrees plus.
Oh my
I'm
God,
a big fan of infrared therapy, but it's not going to get a sauna hot enough. You got to get 180, 185.
degrees. For how long?
20 to 25 minutes, 5 days a week would be ideal.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah. I
Yeah.
mean, if you look at the Finnish studies, and by Finnish I mean from Finland, the the they have a significantly reduced cancer incidence, and there are more saunas than there are motor vehicles in Finland. So it's part of their, culture and upbringing. The homes are built in with saunas. I'm sure originally it was to keep warm, but they do understand the health benefits of these things, and it is well studied.
Oh, that's great. Okay, so what else is there that you do to help change the microenvironment, the metabolic environment in and around the tumor cells?
Well, we love phytonutrients, anthocyanins, berries, lots and lots of berries. We know that's incredibly helpful. High dose vitamin C intravenous is great. We talked about curcumin, which is the active anti-inflammatory nutrient from turmeric. And we like, if you're going to take that as a supplement, we like it liposomal. It delivers better. But you can do it IV, which, also delivers even better. So there are those types of things that we can do to help support the immune system, to help support the suppression of inflammation that cancer wants. It thrives in that. We can talk about alkalinization, drinking higher pH water, which is less acidic. And you can do hydrogen water. That might be another way to do it. An alkaline diet might have more fruits and green leafy vegetables, things like that.
The approach obviously is very involved. So people have to be motivated. They have to be able to actually participate in their own healthcare, and the self-selecting population that you're talking about that come to you, I imagine, fit that bill.
Typically, yes.
Yeah. And how long do treatments last? I mean, I'm sure it's widely variable, but what are we talking about?
Well, most of my patients don't live here in Las Vegas, where I am. They live somewhere else. And so they only come here if we're going to do an injection or IV treatment. I recommend, and I stay in touch with them. We talk every month, but I recommend we have someone in their area that can do the IV therapies like the vitamin C. We talk about diet, exercise. I coach them, I encourage them. We check labs, we check scans. So I'm on top of that for them, with them. Uh, but their treatment may last as long as they wanted to. And, you know, even in people who we've been able to control their tumor burden and not detect it, we're still keeping an eye on them. So, you
Yeah,
know,
there's ongoing surveillance
yeah.
on that. So here's something that just popped into my head that I would be amazed and really pleased they're already doing this, or if this is already a clinical application. But I'm wondering if this is a potential application of this. That is when a biopsy is done, whether it's looking at a breast biopsy, looking at a mass, it could be a cancer or prostate biopsy, there's a risk that that procedure could release tumor cells that then spread and pop up in other parts of the body. Is this a potential application of that preventing those tumor cells from seeding somewhere else in the body?
Yeah, we've thought of this. Thank you for bringing that up. We've thought of this too. So theoretically, yes, right? You would, hey, we're going to be doing a biopsy of your tumor. We're going to half an hour before that do an infusion of NK exosomes. So in case there's a circulating cell that gets away, you're enhanced in your ability to clear it, to kill it and clear it. That makes complete sense to me. And you're thinking along, you're going through the same thought process that we've had over the last year and a half, or as long as we've been looking at these things. So no one's come to us for that yet, because most of the time they're getting a biopsy, it's a brand new diagnosis, and they haven't started to do their homework online as to
Right.
all the different alternative therapies out there yet.
And then there's also the question of secondary cancers caused by chemotherapy and radiation therapy years later,
Right.
like AML popping up, post-treatment AML, acute myeloid leukemia. I imagine that's, potentially another, possible application. I don't know
Yeah.
how that would work though, in terms of how to prevent that.
Yeah, we've theorized this where people would have sort of a cancer in remission, and they want to keep in remission, or in this case, not develop any other cancer related to their treatment. So they might come in for every 6 or 12 months an infusion of NK exosomes. That's not far-fetched, and it's
Yeah.
easy and well tolerated. Um, and there's a study where they took normal patients and gave them NK cells. This is before they were able to separate the exosomes, so it goes back a little bit. NK cells, and all the zombie cell markers went down. So they were, in essence, reversing the biological age of these patients
And that
by,
raises another interesting
yeah,
application. I mean, you talked about senescent cells, earlier in this conversation, and applications towards what is now is very popular. I mean, a few years ago, never even heard of it, but health span and longevity and lifespan. That's all the rage right now, those terms. So, what
yeah.
about its applications in those fields, not just cancer?
Yeah, I mean, listen, if I had abundant doses, I've got patients, I do a lot of longevity care. I have patients that are very interested in doing this for longevity. I just think I need to do life saving before I do life extending with that particular modality. We have other things for longevity, stem cell derived exosomes, stem cells, things like that.
Yeah.
Um, which also do help clear out senescent cells. There are other ways to stimulate the natural killer cell system. We also, we mentioned the fasting and the exercise, but glutathione is a great supplement for that. It's difficult to deliver to the cells, so you have to have a really good method for that. It can be IV as well. We've done that. There's something called transfer factor, immune transfer factor, which is a supplement that you can look at. There are different things you can do. Just everything you do to support your health in general, to suppress inflammation and cellular health, will improve your immune system in a way where it can help fight the cancer that your body is already set up to fight. It was just losing the battle at some point.
Since you mentioned natural killer cells themselves reducing markers of senescence, cellular senescence, I don't know if there's a limited number of natural killer cells that can be used clinically like there are for exosomes, small limited number of exosome that you can source. Is that another option for people looking to apply this longevity?
Yes, here's the issue. Um, I think in that study they were autologous, meaning coming from that person, which means they had to extract tons of blood, extract the white cells. From there, get the very few natural killer cells, put them in a petri dish in a setting, and make them grow and duplicate till they had enough to give a treatment dose. That's a very, very expensive, laborious, time-consuming process. That something like that would be like $50,000 to $100,000 endeavor. And
Wow.
they do that. You can go down to Mexico and get that. And there are probably places here in the US you might be able to do that. The alternative is to use someone else's natural killer cells, but those cells do have cell surface markers that can be identified as foreign. Then you've got the potential where you are causing an immune or a reaction against, a rejection reaction, which, in one way stimulates the immune system, but maybe not in the way you want it to. So that's not something that I offer, but it's not unreasonable to think about and seek as an alternative.
This has been fascinating. How can people find out more about your work and learn more about you if they want to reach out, learn more about your clinic and what you do? How can they reach you?
Thank you for that. Our brand is Recelebrate, Recelebrate. And recelebrate.com is the website. Our socials are at Recelebrate. And I think we've cornered the internet on that word because we invented it. So if you just
Right.
search that term, you'll find us.
And the links will be in the show notes of this. Thank you so much. I learned a ton. I'm very excited about what you do. I hope
Thank
that
you.
the technology gets more advanced and more developed so that this is more widely available, not only to your patients, but other clinicians and not just in the US, but globally. It sounds like a really has incredible potential. So thank you.
Agreed. Agreed. And thank you for having me. I appreciate it.